Life begins when you find yourself. Return to your true self within the silence. You didn't come here by accident. Something in you has been searching, quietly, patiently, for something real. This video isn't about self-help cliches or surface-level advice. It's an invitation, quiet but urgent, to re-examine the roles you've been given, the masks you've worn, and the voice within that's been waiting to be heard. Carl Jung once said, "Real life begins when we turn inward." In the stillness after collapse, a deeper voice calls you back to what matters. If you've ever felt like you're living someone else's life or caught in a loop of success that doesn't feel like your own, stay with this. This is not just self-reflection, it's psychological awakening, it's shadow work, it's healing. And through it, you'll find the strength not to fix yourself, but to finally return to who you've always been. Watch closely. Feel deeply. You're not alone. When the world collapses and we begin to question everything, there are moments in life when the ground beneath our feet seems to disappear. What once felt certain begins to dissolve. Goals that used to shine like distant stars lose their light. We wake up one day and ask ourselves, almost in a whisper, am I truly living the life I chose? Or am I merely performing a role written by someone else somewhere along the way? These questions do not arise randomly. They surface like a quiet storm, unsettling but honest, echoing from the depths of our inner world. They come when the noise outside begins to fade and we are left alone with our own reflection. In this silence, something deeper stirs. A discomfort, yes, but also a longing, a desire not just to live, but to feel alive. The collapse we experience is not always visible. It can come silently disguised as routine burnout or the nagging emptiness behind a smile. But this crumbling is not a failure. It is an opening, a crack through which truth seeps in. The truth that perhaps we have strayed far from who we truly are, that somewhere we stopped listening to the voice within. Carl Jung once said that life truly begins when we turn inward. This collapse, painful as it may be, marks that turning point. It is the moment we stop running away from the questions that scare us and start facing them with honesty. What do I want? What have I denied? Who am I beneath all these roles? The world falling apart is not the end. It is the threshold, a chance to begin again, not with answers, but with sincerity. In this collapse, there is a seed of clarity, a quiet reminder that when everything outside breaks down, we are invited to rebuild from the inside. We are not weak for doubting. We are not lost because we feel broken. We are simply standing at the edge of ourselves, being called home. And sometimes it takes the world to fall apart for us to finally look inward and ask, what truly matters to me? The journey inward. No one else but yourself. When everything around us begins to crumble, the most natural instinct is to seek answers outside. We search for new goals, new identities, someone or something to tell us who we should become. But the true turning point does not come from the external world. It begins the moment we dare to look inward. In that quiet space where the noise of expectation fades, we encounter the one person who has always been there, but often ignored ourselves. The journey inward is not a straight path. It is not a staircase leading upward, but a winding trail through unfamiliar terrain. It often starts with discomfort, even resistance. We are conditioned to keep moving, to chase, to perform. To stop and turn inward feels unnatural, almost wrong. Yet it is precisely this pause that opens the door to transformation. To meet yourself fully is not to find a perfect version of who you are. It is to witness all that you are without judgment. The pain, the contradictions, the longing, the dreams you abandon. It is about sitting with your own truth, even when it is inconvenient, even when it disrupts the story you told the world. Carl Jung called this a process individuation, the unfolding of the true self through integration. But before we can integrate, we must first face our hidden parts, our lost parts, our forgotten needs. This is not a process of fixing, but of recognizing. We do not heal by becoming someone else. We heal by returning to what was always within us. This inward journey is not about isolation. It is about reconnection. Reconnection with the self beneath the layers. Reconnection with the values we buried to fit in. Reconnection with the inner compass we ignored to please others. As we remove the noise, we begin to hear again. And what we hear may surprise us, a voice quiet but certain, reminding us of what we love, what we fear, and what we truly need. No one can walk this journey for you. No ideology, no guidebook, no role model can replace the sacred act of listening to your own soul. The world may offer templates, but the path inward is yours alone. And in choosing to walk it, you begin to live not by default, but by design. From that moment on, life is no longer something that happens to you. It is something you shape from the inside out. The mask of life, when we mistake ourselves for the role we play. From the moment we enter this world, we begin to shape ourselves in ways that help us fit in. We learn what earns praise, what draws love, and what causes rejection. Without realizing it, we construct a version of ourselves that feels safe, acceptable, and admired. This version is what Carl Jung called the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the social world. The persona is not inherently false. It is a necessary tool, a way for us to function in society, to communicate, to relate. But problems begin when the mask hardens. When we no longer distinguish between who we truly are and the role we perform, slowly unconsciously we begin to confuse the approval we receive with our self-worth. We forget that what we show the world is only a fragment, not the whole. Many of us have lived years, even decades, in roles we did not choose. We followed the path expected of us. We became the child our parents dreamed of, the partner others admired, the employee who never said no. And at some point in the quiet hours, we begin to feel a strange emptiness, a disconnect between the life we live and the life that feels real. This is not a crisis of failure. It is a signal of awakening, a gentle tug reminding us that we are more than our image, that behind the smile, the achievements, and the polished answers there is a self we have abandoned. And that self is not asking for perfection. It is asking to be seen. To begin shedding the mask is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of courage. It means daring to ask yourself what truly matters, even if the answer disrupts your current life. It means acknowledging the parts of you that do not fit into the role you were assigned. And above all, it means reclaiming the right to be whole, not just acceptable. When we mistake ourselves for the role we play, we live in a cage made of expectations. But when we remember who we were before the mask, we begin to return, not to an ideal version of ourselves, but to the most honest one. That is where freedom begins, not in becoming someone new, but in being allowed to be who we already are. The dark mirror of the soul, facing the parts we dare not see. Beneath the surface of our polished identities lies the shadow, a part of us that holds what we have rejected, denied, or feared. This is not the evil within us, but the unseen, the unloved, the misunderstood. Carl Jung called this part the shadow, and he believed that until we face it, it will quietly influence our actions, choices, and relationships. The shadow contains the emotions we were taught to hide: anger, sadness, envy, insecurity. As children, we were often told to be good, to behave, to smile, even when it hurt. So we buried these parts thinking they made us unworthy. But buried emotions do not disappear. They wait in silence, showing up in moments of stress and sudden outbursts, or in the subtle ways we sabotage our own happiness. To face the shadow is to acknowledge that we are not just light. We are also the darkness we were taught to fear. This is not a weakness. It is an invitation to become whole. Avoiding the shadow only deepens our wounds. But when we turn toward it with curiosity instead of judgment, we begin to heal. This confrontation is not dramatic. It is quiet, personal, often uncomfortable. It happens when we admit that we are not always kind, or that we feel jealous, or that we are afraid of not being enough. These truths are hard to hold, but they are real. And in their honesty, they free us. The shadow is not our enemy. It is the part of us that holds everything we were too afraid to feel. By welcoming it, we reclaim the lost pieces of our humanity. We stop pretending to be perfect and begin to accept ourselves as we truly are. Not flawless, but whole. Facing the shadow requires courage, but it also brings relief. There is a strange peace in no longer running, a quiet strength in saying this too is part of me. And in that acceptance we grow. We begin to live not by suppressing what we fear, but by integrating it. That is the first real step toward inner freedom. Returning to wholeness. When we are no longer fragmented. True healing does not come from removing our flaws, but from recognizing and embracing every part of who we are. The journey of becoming whole begins when we stop trying to split ourselves into good and bad, acceptable and unacceptable. It begins when we understand that each part of us has a reason for being, even the ones we wish did not exist. We are taught to value strength, success, and certainty. We hide our confusion, our wounds, our contradictions. But the more we deny these parts, the more fragmented we become. We end up living in pieces, presenting only the side that feels worthy while rejecting the rest. This inner divide is exhausting. It leaves us feeling hollow, disconnected from ourselves. Carl Jung called the process of becoming whole individuation. It is not a destination, but a journey of integration. Integration does not mean perfection. It means giving space to every emotion, every truth, every forgotten voice. It means sitting with discomfort without trying to fix it. It means listening deeply, especially when what we hear is difficult. Wholeness is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who we were before we learned to hide. The child who felt deeply, dreamed wildly, spoke honestly. That child still exists. And in returning to them, we find a part of ourselves that was never broken, only buried. To be whole is to live without masks, not because we have nothing to hide, but because we are no longer afraid to be seen. It is to move through life with clarity, knowing that we are complex and still worthy. It is to meet our shadows with compassion and our light with humility. When we are no longer fragmented, we feel grounded, not immune to pain, but anchored in truth. Decisions become clearer. Relationships deepen. Life begins to feel aligned with who we really are. And from this place of wholeness, we can face the world, not as a performance, but as ourselves, fully, honestly, and without apology. Living with meaning. Small actions from a truthful heart. A meaningful life does not always come with grand gestures or dramatic changes. More often, it begins quietly in the smallest choices we make each day. It is not about living a perfect story, but living one that feels true. When we start aligning our actions with our inner values, we begin to create a life that is not just survived, but deeply lived. Meaning is not found in achievements alone. It reveals itself when we act with intention, saying no to what drains us, saying yes to what brings us alive, choosing rest without guilt, speaking honestly even when our voice shakes. These small acts are not insignificant. They are the foundation of a life rooted in truth. To live with meaning is to be present with what is real. It means we stop chasing the image of success defined by others. We begin to ask deeper questions. What truly matters to me? What gives me energy instead of taking it? What am I willing to stand for, even when it is difficult? These questions guide us back to ourselves. They cut through the noise of comparison and expectation. And in their clarity, we find our own rhythm. A way of living that may look simple from the outside, but feels rich from within. A life where decisions are not made out of fear or pressure, but from a quiet certainty. Living with meaning does not mean we will not struggle, but it changes how we meet those struggles. Instead of resisting them, we learn from them. We find purpose even in the pain. We discover that meaning is not always joy, but it is always depth. This kind of life is not built overnight. It is shaped slowly, choice by choice, like a sculpture revealing itself with each careful touch. And as we build this life, we begin to trust it. We no longer wait for permission. We stop asking whether we are enough. We start showing up fully, not to impress, but to express. The unspoken legacy, when a genuine life becomes an inspiration. Legacy is often misunderstood. We think it has to be something big, something visible, something remembered by many. But the most powerful legacies are rarely loud. They are quiet, personal, and deeply human. They come from how we live, not just what we accomplish. A genuine life lived with honesty and presence becomes a source of quiet inspiration for others. You may not see the impact you make. You may never know how your courage to be real helps someone else choose truth over fear. But it happens. In every moment you choose integrity, in every interaction, where you listen fully, in every act of kindness you give without expecting anything in return, you are shaping a legacy. It is not about being perfect. It is about being true. People are not inspired by flawless lives. They are moved by lives that reflect authenticity, resilience, and vulnerability. When you show up as you are, even with your doubts and imperfections, you give others permission to do the same. Your legacy lives in your words, your energy, your presence. It lives in the way you make people feel seen, heard, and valued. It lives in the lessons you share, the love you offer, and the space you create for others to be themselves. These things may never be recorded, but they are remembered in hearts. Even the smallest choices leave traces, a word of encouragement, a gesture of compassion, a moment of understanding. These are the seeds that grow into something larger than yourself, something that continues long after you are gone. To live with awareness is to realize that how you live is already your legacy. Every day you are writing it with your attention, your choices, and your actions. The question is not what you will leave behind one day. The question is, what are you living now that others will carry forward? When your life becomes your message, it speaks more powerfully than any words ever could. The journey of becoming, no final point, only deeper layers. Becoming who we truly are is not a destination we arrive at one day with certainty. It is not a line we cross and declare we have made it. It is a continuous unfolding, the journey that reveals new depths, the more we are willing to be honest with ourselves. Each step we take inward shows us there is still more to understand, more to feel, more to integrate. The idea of self-realization is often romanticized. We imagine a moment of clarity, a final breakthrough, after which everything makes sense. But the truth is softer, more subtle. Awakening happens gradually in quiet realizations and everyday choices. It is in choosing truth over comfort, presence over distraction, self-respect over approval. There will be days when the path feels uncertain, moments when old doubts return, when you question whether any of it is working. This is part of the process. Growth is not linear. Healing is not predictable. Becoming is not about always feeling good. It is about staying committed even when clarity fades. The journey asks for patience, for kindness toward ourselves. It asks us to release the need for perfection and to embrace the movement of life as it is. Some lessons will repeat until we are ready. Some truths will only reveal themselves when we have softened enough to receive them. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply in motion, and that is enough. What matters is not how quickly you evolve, but how deeply you are willing to meet yourself along the way. The most profound changes often come quietly disguised as small shifts in awareness, in perspective, in the way you treat yourself. There is no final version of you waiting to be discovered. There is only the ongoing experience of becoming more fully yourself. And with each layer you uncover, you move closer, not to perfection, but to presence. That is the gift of the journey. Not a conclusion, but a return, again and again, to what is real. Quiet acts of healing. When you choose to love yourself each day, healing does not always happen in dramatic moments. Often it arrives quietly disguised as small decisions we make with care. It is in the way we speak to ourselves when we make mistakes. It is in the permission we give ourselves to rest, to say no, to not have all the answers. These small acts of self-respect are where true healing begins. Choosing to love yourself each day does not mean ignoring pain. It means turning toward it with gentleness. It means recognizing when you are overwhelmed and choosing to pause instead of push through. It means being kind to the parts of you that still feel broken. Knowing that healing is not about erasing the wound, but learning to live with it in peace. Healing is often quiet and slow. It happens in the ordinary moments, taking a deep breath before reacting, journaling what you feel instead of suppressing it, reaching out to someone instead of isolating. These are not grand gestures. They are choices rooted in care. Each time you choose presence over avoidance, you are healing. There is no single path to healing. For some, it is found in solitude. For others, in therapy, in art, in movement, in prayer. What matters is not the method, but the intention. Are you moving towards yourself with love or away from yourself in fear? That question can guide your steps more than any plan. You may not see the change right away. Healing does not always feel like progress, but over time, the small choices add up. You notice you are gentler with yourself. Your inner voice softens. You begin to feel safe within your own presence. That is the quiet power of consistent care. To choose healing is to choose yourself again and again. It is not selfish. It is sacred. Because when you tend to your own heart, you do not just change your life. You change how you show up for the world. And that in itself is a quiet revolution. Inner awakening. The light does not come from outside, but from within you. We spend much of our lives looking outward for answers. We search for validation, for direction, for meaning in things outside of ourselves. We hope that success, love, or recognition will finally give us the clarity we crave. But the turning point comes when we stop asking the world to complete us and begin listening to what has been quietly waiting inside all along. Inner awakening is not a sudden burst of enlightenment. It is a slow returning. It is the moment you realize that the voice you have been silencing is your own, that the wisdom you seek has always been there whispering beneath the noise. It grows louder when you become still, when you stop trying to be someone else and start honoring the truth of your own experience. This awakening is not about changing who you are. It is about seeing clearly what was always there. It is remembering that your worth was never up for debate, that your essence was never lost, only overlooked. The light you seek is not at the top of a mountain or in the approval of others. It is within you, waiting to be uncovered, not achieved. When you awaken to your inner truth, you begin to live differently. You become less interested in performing and more interested in being. You let go of the need to prove and start choosing to feel. You allow yourself to slow down, to be present, to listen. And in that listening, you rediscover a deeper connection with yourself and the world around you. Awakening does not mean your life becomes perfect. It means your relationship with life changes. Challenges still arise, but you no longer face them from a place of fear. You face them with awareness, with trust, with the knowledge that you are no longer asleep to your own power. The world will still be loud, fast, demanding, but your anchor is no longer in the noise. It is in your breath, your values, your truth. You are no longer waiting to be rescued. You are meeting yourself fully in this moment, and that meeting is sacred. The greatest shift is not becoming someone better. It is becoming more fully who you already are. And once you experience this, there is no going back. Because once you have touched the light within, you begin to realize that it was never missing. It was only waiting for you to see it. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember who you already are. Every step inward is a step towards truth, not perfection. Keep returning to yourself with gentleness. The world does not need a perfect version of you. It needs your presence, your depth, your truth. That is more than enough.